Welcome back to Nigeria Decides 2023, our continuous coverage of this election live from our commercial capital, Lagos. Now, what could be the direct impact of the emergence of Bola Tinubu as president-elect on the development of due process and development in Nigeria? And that's against the backdrop of the all too familiar inconsistencies that forged his path to victory. Well, Paul James is head of election programs at Iyaga Africa, and he joins the conversation at this point. It's great to have you, and I'll just get straight into it. When you speak to some of the political elite at the moment, the political class, especially those who may have voted in favor of the ruling party, a lot of the feedback comes along the lines of, but this is how elections always go. But these things are normal. This is usual. Now, is this what we should accept as the status quo of how elections are conducted in Nigeria, by accepting what has happened in this situation, as it has happened in several instances in the past? Or is there any light at the end of the tunnel at all that there can be electoral reform?
I think I beg to differ with their opinion about this, especially if you look at the kind of input that has been made to the electioneering process and where we are today. The more investment you make into the elections, the more we retrogress. Turnout in this election is just under 27%, the worst in the history of elections. This is also the election that INEC claimed had registered 93 million Nigerians and had distributed 87 million permanent voters cards. And then, of course, if you look at also all of the issues, all of the concerns that bedeviled this election to the point that we are today, this is the worst, in my best estimation, about the conduct of elections in Nigeria that we have seen. And we should not be too quick to move away from it as if everything is okay, because it will come to haunt us again in the future. The political class could be claiming victory or be celebrating whatever they think is the norm or the tradition, but this is not standard. This has not, by any standard, followed up or measured up to the electoral integrity test. If you look at it from the conduct of the election management body to the attitude of some of these politicians around the conduct of the election, by every standard, like I said, this election has failed to meet the election integrity test.
Paul, James, this matter of turnout, I think, is going to be a recurring conversation as we move along. I want to show you some tweets from the head of Africa coverage at Eurasia, Amaka Anko. We had her on the show, I think, last week ahead of the election. And this is on the matter of turnout. So I want to get your opinion. We're going to put them on here. It says, the truth is that we don't really know what voter turnout in Nigeria was before 2015. Votes were typically inflated in each party's strongholds. Improvements to INEC technology has reduced vote padding since then. A bit misleading to say that voter turnout has decreased since 2003. She continues and says that on alleged low turnout, 2023 turnout could be higher than in previous years and yet appear lower because Beavers closed loopholes of incident reports which allow people not on vote registers to vote. And then unclear that voter registers have been completely purged of deaths since 2015. She continues again. I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Third tweet. It's not clear that voter registers have been completely purged of duplicates either. As a result, the 87 million PVCs likely overstates the actual voting population in Nigeria. With an estimated population of 205 million and 60% under 25, that number appears high anyway. So, I mean, what do you make of this? We've talked about this. Okay, think about this. Okay, one more here. Think about this. How many people do you think went through the trouble of notifying INEC of dead relatives to have them taken off the voter register? With Nigeria's poor ID systems, there is no way for INEC to actually update the voter register efficiently and accurately. I want to get your thoughts on those tweets.
Well, coincidentally, I was also with Amaka Anko just a couple of minutes ago before I came on this show. These are also part of the things that we had discussed. But then, to the point, this is entirely on the doorstep of INEC and no excuse for this. This is also, if you know, that elections are conducted based on the number on the register. So I've always suspect that there has always been problems with the voter register. Even from the 2019, if you go back, for instance, before the election, INEC had mentioned that we got 84 million Nigerians on the register. But then the final figures that we got at the end of the election revealed a discrepancy of 1.6 million, which begged the question since then about the need to audit the register of voters. I quite agree with Amaka. Since we started this democratic process since 1999, rather from 2010, 2011, when there was a complete overhaul of the voter registry where we got a fresh voter registration. No attempt has been made to clean up the voter register. What we have constantly been seeing is just an add-on by the election management body. So yes, I agree there are fundamental issues. But then if you go back, consistently, we also have an average of 35% voter turnout. Before this election, there were concerns, genuine concerns about some attempt to if you like, suppress vote in this election, especially through the action or inaction of some election management body officials, because we got reports that some voters have made attempt to be able to collect their PVCs and were unable to. If you recall, recently there was a report, I think, from Inewi in Anambra State, where people tried to pick up their PVCs. Before the election, they could not access the PVCs, but then at some point, people saw PVCs lying fallow in the bush and started assisting people to distribute them. Beyond that, also the PVC distribution, the collection that INEC did early this year, we also know the issues with that. People would turn up and could not find their PVC, so people could turn up, INEC officials are not there. So for me, those are the fundamental things that you also want to see addressed. Now, don't also forget what happened on election. It was not as if people didn't show up for this election, but in some places, people were not allowed to participate in the process. And in some places also, the system that were put in place, to a large extent, I thought also discouraged people from participation. INEC on its part, for instance, deployed late. And in the past, even that INEC deployed, in some places you hear that it took long period of time before the INEC officials were able to set up the polling units and also provide some form of voter education before they commenced the poll. And even in the application of the bimodal voter accreditation device, we also received reports of locations where the INEC officials just apply it as willfully, sometimes also constituting unnecessary delays in the manner in which they use the device. So I thought, for me, those are the kind of challenges or the issues that we should be talking about. Do not also forget that there were places where elections were not conducted on Saturday, February the 25th, or there were also places because of the fault of INEC that these devices did not work. Election was suspended to continue the following day, and election never happened. We, for instance, from our sample, we got 20 locations where elections were not conducted on February the 25th. They were spread up across 9 states. We deployed on Sunday. Of these 20, 13 locations, INEC never showed up to conduct elections. So I think if you put all of this together, it will perhaps provide the sense as to why we saw a low turnout in the election. It was not as if voters didn't show up at the polling unit, but perhaps their participation were limited by some of these issues that we saw around the process on election day.
Thank you so much, Paul. Now, during your post-election statement regarding the election, a member of the YAGA's board, from what we understand, that's Dr. Aisha Abdullahi, revealed that INEC's announcement of the presidential election in Rivers and Imo State is in sharp contrast to your own record observed from the polls. Now that we understand, that this has been, made public, you can confirm if that's true or not. I'm just wondering what happens next in terms of next steps from YAGA's end.
Well, within the remit of what we do as election observers, we provide Nigerians with the report, and then Nigerians are at the liberty to do whatever they like with the report. We observe, we document, we report, and we have done that today. We saw inconsistencies in Rivers State, we saw inconsistencies in Imo State, where we thought votes for one party was erroneously allocated to another party. Votes, for instance, for the Labour Party, in our own sense, were added onto the votes for the APC in Rivers State and also in Imo State. These are like the bigger issues that we saw. If we dig deeper into that, there are also places that are concerns about overvoting, but we thought, which we thought INEC didn't just address. INEC simply just move on, and this should not be, for me, the standard for our election. We should not be in a hurry to conclude the process so that people will just be ending up in the court of law. If there are chances to address this issue, they should be fundamentally addressed before we move to the next cycle of elections. So, like I said, the reports are out there for people to go verify. For these 2 states, what we did was to painstakingly go through the INEC election portal, the IREF, the INEC results that were uploaded online. For the 2 states, for Rivers State in specific, for instance, there were some results that were not uploaded, some results that were supposedly for presidential. If you open the pages, you will see they are for the senatorial election. And even for the presidential, when we were only able to assess 50% of this that INEC had posted. And from the 50% that we analyzed based on what our observers have submitted, we saw the inconsistency in the report that INEC had provided at the end of the elections.
Now, the picture that is being painted is a little discouraging. And in the absence of swift post-election dispute resolution, how likely is it that this incoming administration will be able to garner the legitimacy that it needs to move Nigeria forward and to develop Nigeria?
Well, exactly. This is, for me, I think, fundamentally a time for healing, a time for reconciliation. The incoming administration will have to first start thinking about building bridges, and will also need to purge itself and come clean about some of these issues, because allegations have been made, which I thought will dampen the confidence that some citizens will have in the incoming administration. They need to help, especially in the process of unraveling whatever will have happened in the process. For us, we thought the fundamental thing to do is even first to do a cleanup exercise from the election management body. People have lost confidence in the institution. So if we are talking about institutional building, we need to first start from that. We need to also begin to talk about strengthening our laws further. From the judiciary and all of that, everybody will be involved in this process going forward. I think the Nigerian project should be put ahead of every or any individual or personal interest. But I think the fundamental thing to do first is to purge the election management body of these bad elements that we see that have derailed the system.
Paul James, logistics continues to be a recurring issue with Nigeria. You've had the Naira swap issue in logistics and getting the notes to the banks. You've got logistics with fuel, the fuel scarcity, where the head of the NNPCL, Mele Kyari, said there were logistics issues in delivering fuel across the country. You've got logistics issues now with the elections. I mean, even e-commerce businesses in Africa aren't doing that well because, again, there are logistics challenges. How do we solve this perennial problem of logistics in Nigeria that continues to pop up here and there? Now, the theme between Naira, fuel, elections is government. So I've asked this question already. Does this need to be outsourced, the logistics arm of this?
I think sometimes these things are even deliberate. Elections are not events that happen just in one day. They are a series of events that lead to elections. And I always believe the end of one process begins the next process. We always leave this engagement. We make them so episodic that they happen very close to the election. Conversations about this process, for instance, as late as December last year was when we began to have engagement bilaterals with the logistics companies and all of that. So I thought it's something that should also have started early. Let us also not forget there were attempts on the part of INEC to move these materials closer. As of Wednesday of before the election, Thursday before the elections, We know these materials have been dispatched to the states. These materials have been couriered to the state. By Thursday, some local governments started receiving the materials. By Friday, most of the places we visited confirmed they had received the materials and they were batching them according to the different registration area centers. And even some have even dispatched them to the registration area centers. What happened was in the morning of the election. I think that is first the place that INEC need to start investigating. Sometimes I feel that this is internal sabotage. Like I've said perhaps on this platform, before the election, we had a sense that this was going to happen because INEC officials had complained. But what we keep getting from INEC every time is the assurance that things are okay. We are all humans. We understand the human element to this, the human angle to this. If there are problems, tell Nigerians. We understand the concerns so that we will know how to. It is better that we manage expectations so that crisis communication will also be better controlled, not until these things happen. We know there were going to be concerns, especially with accessing cash. Some of these officials, especially the road transporters, were insisting until they get cash, they don't mobilize. We know there will be also concerns, especially with getting fuel. But the INEC chair keep assuring us everything is sorted. They are in conversation with the CBN. They are in conversation with the oil companies, and there won't be problems until we find ourselves in this mess. So I think for me, that is where this needs to start, that the Commission also needs to improve in its public engagement, especially in the public communication. If there are anticipated challenges, let us know. There is nothing stopping Nigeria from, for instance, even staggering this election if they are not going to be conducted in a manner that will be transparent and acceptable to all Nigerians. I thought there was that rush to just be able to break the jinx of not being able to conduct election on the first day of election like we have seen in time past in the 2011, 2015, and 2019. But then I think there are lessons to be learned from this, and that these perennial challenges should stop, especially with the coming elections from March 11. Nigeria need to make a statement. We need to have a new template of defining or talking about improvements or standards of our elections in this country.
Thank you so much, Paul. Now, earlier on, we listened to the candidate of the Labour Party for the governorship elections here in Lagos State, and he mentioned that, at least according to his words, that they would not be fooled a second time and would therefore be providing their own private security based on the fact that they were not impressed with what's played out on election day. I'm just wondering, now that we've seen that snippet, for instance, what you think might play out come March 11th with what we saw happen on election day and statements like this?
Well, I think our laws are clear. The lead agency on election security is the Nigerian police, and with support from other sister security agencies. We just want to see that they rise to this occasion. Even from the presidential election, for instance, our report revealed that in 16% of the locations where we deployed our observers, security officials were complicit, or they were not professional, and some of them were partisan. Some of them even aided the snatching of ballot or moving away of ballot papers or election materials. We want to see that the security agencies, the security forces begin to apprehend these people. We want to see sanctions are enforced, especially for these erring officials. We heard that some arrests were made. They need to name and shame these persons and also provide that level of confidence to Nigerians that they are going to provide security for all and not selective or not providing security to a few. So perhaps it is on that basis that we're hearing such statements coming from frontline candidates like the governor of the Labour Party candidate for Lagos. But I don't want us to begin to tow through the path of people providing their private security, where the laws are clear that the police, the Nigerian police, should be the lead agency with support from other known public or government security agencies.
Paul, we'll have to follow up on that. If you had your own observers that clearly showed, as you've just said, that as the law has put in place, the lead security agency is the state, and yet agents of the state that are in charge of keeping security in place were complicit in some instances or completely ineffectual and just stood by and let things happen. If you have observations like that, and yet of course we still have the law that says that this is the entity that is in charge of security, what else are people supposed to do, Paul? You live here in Nigeria. Nigerians provide their own power. Nigerians provide their own water. Nigerians provide, in many cases, their own infrastructure. You have businesses here in Nigeria that are given tax credits by the government to build infrastructure like roads. So, I mean, these things are being outsourced to the private sector. Why wouldn't anybody want to get their own security to keep themselves safe, Paul? I understand the law, but do you understand the human element of this?
I quite agree with you, and I share the pains of Nigeria. I empathize with Nigerians. All of us go through this. All of us also have to pay sometimes for the kind of comfort that we want, which is supposed to be the responsibility of government. But like I said, for election security, let us be clear that the lead agency is the police. And now if the police said they don't have evidence as to what had happened, I am saying there are reports, credible reports that the police can rely on. And that is what we do as observers. Like I said, they can approach us and we can show them instances or point them to locations where we got report about some of these infractions that had happened. I wouldn't want us to begin to put the security around elections or around polling units in the hands of private individuals, which we know, all of us know that could be abused. And so it is very important that we keep pushing this forward. These are also not things that just happened on February the 25th. There were signs before now that this could snowball to election day if they were not controlled. Before the election, there were a lot of security mappings that happened. Before election, there were a lot of insecurities that we saw, a lot of concerns around election security. Concerns even about how if they are not controlled, could disenfranchise voters. If you think about a state, for instance, like Niger State, on the eve of the election, there were attacks in Shiroro local government that displaced about 6 communities. Now, before the election, in the build-up to the election, we at Yaga Africa had received reports of about 9 states where there are security concerns, some of them within the belt of the Northwest. And we shared this report with security. How did they act on it? All you keep saying is, like I will always say, the week of the election, you see them all over the place doing what they call show of force. But then is that enough? When you are not on ground to provide the kind of communication, to inspire the kind of confidence that citizens want, of course, citizens will begin to think about the alternative. But we don't want to descend to that level. Now that another election is upon us, we are hoping they take lessons from that and they will start coming up with communication that inspires confidence, that inspires hope, and also in specific, tell Nigerians the kind of engagement that they will have for the coming elections.
All right, thank you for that, Paul. Now, the chair of Yaga Africa watching the vote, that's Hussaini Abdu, had made a statement that if INEC's results fall within Yaga Africa's estimated ranges, then the public, political parties and candidates should have confidence that the official results reflect the ballots cast at the polling units. Now that voting has been concluded, a winner has been declared. Has Yaga been able to collate this, and can you confirm that the ranges, the figures, the results that Yaga collected in their observations are within the same range as what INEC has shared with the nation?
Thank you very much for that important question. So for us, in looking at the election outcome, we don't do that in isolation of the process. In addition to what the chair has said, is to also said, for us at Yaga, we said if the process leading to the outcome is fundamentally flawed, we will not verify the election. But if the process leading to the outcome, by our estimation, is a good process, then we'll verify the outcome. Based on what INEC had released, they are consistent with what we have seen at the polling unit level. But like we will say, there were concerns around the conduct of the elections. There were concerns around logistics. There were concerns also about the transparency of the election results itself. from what INEC has submitted from the polling unit, and then also if you check with what INEC had released on this result viewing portal, you'll see these inconsistencies, which we thought by our estimation did not meet the election integrity test. Yes, they are consistent with what we have seen, but we thought INEC needs to come clean on some of the figures that we saw from the polling units.
Thank you so much, Paul. Now, during the mock accreditation, you gave recommendations which, according to the conversation we had a few days ago, were not significantly implemented. Now, based on the feedback that has come from this past exercise on February 25th, both from the international community, organizations like yours, how much faith do you have in the electoral body that it will actually ensure that history does not repeat itself come March 11th and might actually make the changes that will inspire confidence in the electorate?
So technology on their own, this is the human element that applied this technology. It's the human element that applied these laws, especially the guidelines. What we saw was a flagrant disregard for the election guideline on the election, especially about the different processes of the election. We had raised concerns before the election, for instance, on even the beavers itself, the testing of the beavers. I have mentioned on this platform. INEC said it was not a public affair when it deployed the beavers and it did public testing in its own. It did tested them in its offices nationwide, state offices. INEC was supposed to install the Chrome on the beavers. They were supposed to install an antivirus, check the camera, check the fingerprint scanners, and all of that. We got report as of then that in 14 states, there were concerns around network, the devices not connecting to network. States like Edo, for instance, reported that they were short of 40 beavers. States like Kwara said there was no backup beavers. INEC didn't do the test in Osun and in Ekiti because, of course, those are the states that had elections last year. And then for the one in Ekiti, Osun, it was subject to litigation based on also the outcome from the last election. So even after that, we did the mock exercise, and we thought INEC, like I also had mentioned, cherry-picked or picked the best that they thought could serve the purpose of the mock exercise. The device did work, but we went into this election. By our findings, the device did work efficiently in 88% of locations. In 8% of locations, it malfunctioned and was fixed. In 2% of locations, it malfunctioned and was replaced. And then in the other 1%, it malfunctioned and was not replaced. Perhaps those are also the 1% that INEC was supposed to conduct the election, but INEC didn't go back to some of those locations to conduct the election. But then if you think about it, it's also an end-to-end thing. Beyond the application of the beavers at the polling unit level, it's also the upload of the images from the scanned images from the results to an INEC online viewing portal. We also have it on report on good authority that there were locations that INEC officials simply refused to follow guidelines and did not use the beavers. INEC has said no beavers, no election. All you simply get from Professor Mahmoud when he was taking the reports from the state, how many cancellations, what were the reasons, no application of beavers. But INEC cannot come clean to tell us Nigerians what it intends to do for places where the beavers was not applied. It is not enough to just cancel the election. You cannot technically,
that's right.
the fault of
I completely understand. Now, Paul James, unfortunately, I do have to interrupt you. We have so many things happening in real time that we have to catch up with. But thank you so much for your insight. That's Paul James of Yaga Africa.